Welcome to another Good Eye Podcast. I'm Jay Smack. Today my guests are Bryan Berry and Aaron Lee. Both are leadership coaches in their own right, and both are going to be attending and talking about today with me Leadercast here in Richmond. And if you're not in Richmond, the event actually also takes place in Cincinnati. It will be simulcast into Richmond, but there will also be live events and live speakers the day of the event down at Main Street Station. So we'll get all the details from them and learn about Bryan and Aaron's paths and what brought them to this point and what has driven them into the sort of the new age of leadership and the new thought process behind what makes a great leader and how to develop great leaders and how to relate to people who are either working for leaders or people who want to be leaders. And when I say leaders, not just business, although that is sort of the crux of what we'll be talking about largely, but also just in general, whether you're a leader of people or a thought leader or a community leader, whatever it is. So let's get into it. Here's my conversation today with Bryan Berry and Aaron Lee talking about Leadercast RVA on today's Good Eye Podcast. And welcome back to another edition of the Good Eye Podcast. I'm Jay Smack, your host. And with me today, two guys who are no stranger to this podcast nor other podcasts, Bryan Berry and Aaron Lee. Guys, welcome. Hey,
thanks for having us, Jay. It's good to see you.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I think Aaron just got out of another podcast, so that's kind of a way of life around here. We're vibing. And you guys are coming on to talk about Leadercast, which is really interesting and brings together a lot of like-minded entrepreneurial people, business leaders, life coaches, wellness perspective, all that kind of stuff coming together in one big cauldron, if you will. And so what I want to start with is a little bit about what Leadercast is, what it offers people, and then we'll get into, and of course, some of the speakers and stuff, but a little bit about you guys as well, because that's just as big a part of, say, Leadercast or Harvesting Chaos or Aaron, what you do with your 5 voices, which I absolutely love. So let's get into what Leadercast is, first of all, when it is, where it is, what people can expect, and then we'll kind of go off and see where the conversation takes us. So Aaron, you want to kick things off? Leadercast Richmond 2023, what it is, where it is, and all that good stuff?
Yeah, Leadercast is one of the world's largest one-day leadership events. So it's a live event that's going to be simulcast across the globe. And so we're hosting, in essence, a kind of watch party with the community here in Richmond. We're going to host that at Main Street Station on May 3rd. From 9 to 5. And there's an incredible lineup of globally recognized speakers. Some names like Henry Cloud, Jeremy Kubicek, Andy Stanley, who people have heard of. Others like Eddie, who's a global changemaker, UN disability rights advocate. Eddie has a disability, wasn't expected to live past the age of 5. And so you can imagine the kind of exciting, invigorating, passionate message he will share. Erica Keswin, a workplace strategist, Dr. Radhika Dirks, an artificial intelligence expert, which anybody's been reading headlines. I don't think when they signed her on that people quite knew the impact that AI was going to have on headlines this year. And so all of those voices coming together that we get to interact with leaders from around Central Virginia. And so gathering people all in one place for one day to download, to be inspired, to get excited, to take some insight back to their workplaces. We know, Bryan and I know that you can't change but so much in one day. But there's an excitement, there's a passion, there's a drive that can happen in one day. And that's what we're hoping to bring, an injection of excitement, motivation, passion into workplaces across the region.
Yeah, what's cool about this event and events like it, as far as the speakers, you mentioned Eddie. And correct me if you guys know the correct pronunciation, but Eddie Ndopu, is that how you pronounce his name? An amazing story. I would urge people to go to the website, and I'll have links on the Good Eye Podcast site with links to the event. But like you said, he wasn't expected to live past the age of 5, but now he's from South Africa. Is that correct? And he's working with the UN. He's an advocate for people with disabilities rights. Just an amazing person to bring into this. And that is what a lot of these events have in common, is that the people who are speaking, that the attendees get so much value from, have this backstory and this credibility that that is really amazing. And they're speaking from that perspective that, you know, even if, say, someone in Richmond, Virginia doesn't have, say, circumstances to necessarily overcome or something like that, that they can apply to their own lives, whether they're thought leaders or business people or all of the above. But Bryan, what are some of the things that people can expect to hear about when they come to the conference? And just clarify for us, if you would, this is a simulcast of an event that's being held in Cincinnati, correct? And yet business leaders and entrepreneurs and thought leaders are coming together in Richmond to watch it, but to also have resources of their own that they can access, correct?
That's right. So one of the things we'll actually have some speakers on stage to begin with, because the event's taking place in Central Standard Time. So we'll have that first hour where I'll host a panel of local leaders along with Aaron, and we'll talk about some of the local things that are going on. The event itself is called Human Intelligence. And so all of the focus is going to be on subjects that involve today's workplace, shaping today's leaders. A big driving force for Aaron and I, what we both do, we are both certified leadership developers through a company called Giant Worldwide. So Giant has been around for several years, actually bought a bunch of the John Maxwell coaching properties years ago. And in fact, Leadercast was one of those properties years ago that was a Maxwell event. So everything that we do is based around developing leaders to be the type of leader that others want to follow. So this day event is going to be packed with information to help that process along and give people just different insights, eye-opening ways of seeing the world a little bit differently maybe than they may before they come in. And then a central concept for what Aaron and myself and some other local Giant guides, Steve Perkey, Jerry Howard, Mark Wynn, there's several others, I'll forget names, but all of us will be there that day and be interacting with folks as well. We'll have takeaways for them as well. I'm looking forward to the first hour where we'll have that panel and we'll be able to, we'll have a well-known or two local business leader up there with us. For the day itself, though, the way it's laid out, we'll have everything everyone needs to have an enjoyable, comfortable day there. So we have all the morning coffee and everything else and lunch as the event goes along. We are limiting the attendance to 200 folks. So for those listening, don't wait too long to get tickets, because we capped that just so we could keep it as a more intimate group there that day and have enough of us that we can have interactivity among the tables. The idea is that we'll get leaders around tables so they can have time to network and discuss issues amongst themselves as well. It's something that I've not been a part of in the past, so I'm really looking forward to this in particular. We had an opportunity late in the year last year to pick up the license to actually host this simulcast of this. So one of the things we wanted to do is pick a nice central location that was easy for folks to get to. Obviously, there's a lot of history behind Main Street Station, so it's a really great location. We love working with the GM there as well. But at the end of the day, we'll have an opportunity for folks to follow back up with us. If they have questions, we'll have access to replays of some of the talks or information from any of the speakers. And one of the things that Aaron and I are both looking forward to is Jeremy Kubicek, who he mentioned is actually one of the founders of Giant. And he'll be he'll be speaking on one of the tools and books that he developed called the Peace Index, which Aaron and I use a lot with our clients and companies that we work with. And again, it sounds, what does the Peace Index have to do with leadership? But one of the big things that we know is there are two main things that great leaders have. One is self-awareness, and another is inner peace. And if you can get really good at those two, then folks will want to follow you. For me, Harvesting Chaos is based on a lot of things that you know about, that some others don't know about. Was me surviving a handful of opportunities at not still being here and getting through those and managing, literally staring death in the face more than once and making it through. And then learning about this Peace Index tool was one of the main things that helped me sort of get back on top of it and just break parts of life down in 5 little easy, measurable, and manageable sections. And for us as being leadership developers, it also helps us zero in on where leaders might be having issues. So that'll be one of the great takeaways they get. So I think it's going to be packed. The event offers continuing education credits for some professions. So if you're a human resource person, a member of HRCI or SHRM, you can come. You can get 4 to 4.5. I'm not sure about the half. It might be 4.5. I know it's going to be 4 hours of CE. And even for nurses, there are 2 different nurses organizations, and they can qualify for CE as well. And then there's some general CE that will be available. Some organizations don't put out exactly what their requirements are. They just give you CE that you have to go get. So those folks can submit this material, and they'll get links from us at the end of the day with step-by-step instructions on how to file for those. So there's a lot of reasons to come down. It's not just for the day. It's going to be packed with material, and as a bonus, you can pick up some CE while you're there as well.
Talk a little bit about briefly what Giant Worldwide is, and bouncing off of that, I want to say new, I guess it's not so new, but the new attitude, the new approach to management and leadership that you guys are a part of. You mentioned leaders having inner peace as one aspect. And of course, I kind of relate that to the definition of bravery, which is not the absence of fear, but action in the presence of fear. So inner peace is not necessarily nothing bothers you, everything's cool, everything's great, we're here to have a good time and not make money. That's not the truth. No matter what you're leading, I'm just talking about the business aspect. But talk about a little bit about the evolution of leadership and where you guys have landed. Bryan, I'll throw it back to you first, and then we'll get Aaron's thoughts on that.
Okay, I was actually gonna let Aaron go first, but I think we're gonna work backwards on this a little bit. So. Okay. Aaron's been doing this, particularly with Giant, for a few years longer than I have. So for me, Jay, what you just said about, it's not being, bravery, and it's not the absence of. For me, with chaos and my company being Harvesting Chaos, and I talk when I speak publicly, my keynote is called Harvesting Chaos to Pursue Passion. I always tell people that it's the same thing. This peace isn't the absence of chaos. It's just the ability to manage it and stay cool through the whole thing. So it's, I say a lot of things that probably aren't Giant approved when I give my comparisons, but it was the old commercial, never let them see you sweat. So it's sort of the same idea. It's maintaining, if you have inner peace in these other 5 areas of life that we talk about, then you're in a good place. You're in a great place to handle chaotic moments or to handle situations that might otherwise cause panic, because you're not worrying about some of these other things going on. You have peace at home, you have peace in your personal health, peace in your finances. And it doesn't mean you're the richest person or the healthiest person. It just means you're at a peace level in those different areas. And you have, it's a long time. This podcast would go on for hours if we got really deep into it.
Or you'd have to attend a Leadercast.
One of the things for me, and why I'm excited to be a part of or have the ability to work with Giant with some of the material that they've created was that after going through the medical crisis almost 5 years ago, coming out of that and wanting to take what I went through and all the steps and everything else that was going through and use that to help others develop a sense of calmness in the face of adversity, was a goal of mine. And then stumbling through Aaron onto Giant and their tools, and I'll let Aaron talk more about the history there. It was a perfect fit. It was like, my hands found the perfect gloves for what I was trying to find. And different than some other coaching material that I had been through and studied and looked at, the material that Giants produced is for me, just from my standpoint, extremely actionable, extremely applicable. It can be transformational if you get into it. But beyond that, it's actually pretty simple. And we use simple drawings to help you know how to manage difficult situations. And it's so it's sticky. And I'll let Aaron talk a little bit more about that, because he's been, I don't know how many years you've been working with Giant. So
yeah.
A little bit.
No, I appreciate that. I wanted Bryan to go first, and we will get into some of the stuff that you went through, because I think it speaks to what you're talking about and explains a little bit of how your path has brought you to where you are, which makes perfect sense that you're doing this. But Aaron, I wanted to jump over to you because I wanted to get your perspective on Giant and the new age of leadership in relation to your 5 voices, which I really enjoy. I think it makes a lot of sense to me, because it also requires that one understands themselves before they can bring the best of them to their organization. It's not a program. It's not a cookie cutter type of thing that people apply. Just follow these steps and you're in business. But rather, you really have to understand yourself first. So if you could use that as a jumping off point.
Yeah, if you look back, Jay, I don't know, 50, 60, 80 years, leadership became synonymous with a title. And a lot of times we even still associate our identity with our title, what our work is, what we're doing, who we do that work for. And so at a certain level, you rise through the ranks, you get a promotion, and we walk in thinking this old industrial age model that, okay, I'm in the role, I'm in the position, people must respect me now. And there's a dynamic shift that's happened over the last few decades as we've become more digital, more fast-paced. Everything's just flying so fast in our face, lots of change all around us. We've got to build some different approaches to leadership. And so it starts with us. It's not just about how much we know. And as we think about human intelligence for Leadercast, no longer can we think about how much we know and letting the human brain know the most information in the room. Somebody else can get as much information as in your head, my head, plus Bryan's combined almost instantaneously. So we've got to find another approach, and it's a more relational approach built more on influence. And so as we think about the intersection, not only of the skill, no matter what industry you're in, I was talking to somebody in one industry this morning, and we talked about the expertise there, engineering, medicine, any of our backgrounds, we can have an expertise. We also have to know ourselves, and we have to be able to translate and understand who's on the other side, who else is in this relationship with us. One of my favorite TV shows right now is SWAT on CBS, and I've been watching really just in the last 2 months, I've watched all 5 seasons. And in one of the early episodes of season 6, one of the SWAT officers is a dad of kids, and he says to a younger officer, "Hey, each one of my kids has a different father." And the younger kid's like, "Wait, what?" He's like, "No, I am their dad, but I have to be a different dad for each one of them." And I think that principle applies to leadership as well. No matter how many people are in our care, we have to be a different leader to each one of them. And so our framework, the visual tools Bryan mentioned, the frameworks, starting with the 5 voices, understanding ourselves, to understand each other, all allows us to be just the leader that the other person needs us to be, because it's not a one size fits all world anymore.
I love that, the different dads, which again speaks sort of to your 5 voices, and which is aligned closely with the Myers-Briggs type of thing. But let's talk brass tacks, and we're talking about attitudes and leadership, and it's a little bit esoteric, it's a little bit theoretical. Can you talk about, and this is a question, I'm not asking you to, maybe you're like, I don't address that, but I suspect that you do. How is this form of leadership and this mindset better for business?
Yeah, there is some data behind this, and multiple people in multiple studies have found the average team only reaches 60% of their productivity potential. It's like a glass ceiling. And so if we just walk in and we go on autopilot and we keep doing things the way we've always done them, both individually and collectively, then we don't increase that. One of the things we talk about is how we get that 60% up to 80, 85, 90. And you want to talk about brass tacks. There were some companies in 2020, 2021 that some of our coaching colleagues worked with that over the course of that year, they wrapped up years in the heart of the pandemic, just crushing their competition. Sales numbers, revenue numbers through the roof. They accomplished incredible results that each of them all pointed back to the work they had done on leadership and culture. And so it removes the cobwebs, it clears up confusion and chaos, allows us to be more productive, more focused, get more done, and enjoy it in the process, which always has a financial impact in the long run as well.
Yeah, there are a couple other things too that not everyone is sort of thinks about or focuses on, and that is where today's workforce is in their drive to do what they do. And one of the things, if we look back in, say, the 20s and 30s, the main reason people went to work was strictly to put food on the table and feed their family and keep a roof over their head. And that was the only reason they went. It was just whatever the boss said, I have to do because I have to keep this job and I have to. As those kids grew up and we got into the 50s, it was more of sort of the American dream idea started to come up. It's the, the house with the 2 cars and 2.3 kids and a dog, and now we're starting to work to put the kids into college and further their education, and then those kids go to college and do something that their parents were never able to do, as far as where they got into. But it was a different mindset as to when that group came out, it was to go do a particular profession that they were choosing to go do. And now the kids coming out of school now are, number one, a lot of them want to start off as the CEO as soon as they get into the job force, right? But there's a purpose. Most of today's job force is working for a cause or something else that they want to do, and not everyone is just driven by taking this job because I have to have this job. It's what can I do to, where am I going to be happy? What am I going to be able to accomplish? And so the mindsets that led employees decades ago just simply don't work today. And so we see things like even though we're in a strange economy, strong, weak. I mean, it just depends on what measure you look at. Aaron and I are both reading a book. He put me on a book today, and it's one of the things that just talks about GDP probably not being the greatest thing to judge happiness or success in the world, because all it does is measure a financial number. It doesn't measure how happy people are with what's actually going on, and all of those things. To be a successful leader and not be facing high turnover rates or stress of everything else, leadership has to adapt, and that's a big part of what we're able to help leaders do. So,
You know, you both bring up really good points. And how often have we all heard those stories of someone saying, and that someone could be a professional basketball player, they could be a plumber, you know, they could be a teacher, they could be a musician, it doesn't matter. They all say, it wasn't until I knew someone believed in me and thought that I had value that I really found my place. So it could be almost anything that can find someone as their calling, and the new form or the new ideas of leadership really can hopefully foster a lot of that and provide a welcoming environment for someone who just wants to feel valued. But people feel valued based on different terms. You know, people all have, again, I keep hitting the voices. People all have different voices and perspective and stories and backstories and experiences, and just feeling valued rather than, you know, having someone making sure you're punching the clock at the right time can go so far.
Well, Aaron threw out one of the stats about, you know, the 60 or 62%. There's another one that only 82% of the population actually feels heard, and that's another big thing, is that the whole voice assessment, the 5 voices that you mentioned. A big part of that is helping other people understand exactly how Jay likes to hear things, how Jay processes things, and you know, what might trigger Jay's defense system to kick in. And so that's a part of what we go through with that 5 voices. When I don't know that you've probably hit the surface of it with Aaron, but it's one of those things, he could spend so much more time digging in. You discover even more about yourself. But more importantly, if you have the folks around you do it and you understand their voice orders as well, all of a sudden your entire conversations change. Because of, you know, Aaron's point about the dad needing to be a different father to each one of the kids. You know, even in my household, I have 4, and out of 4 people, we have 4 different first voice orders, and it's really interesting how conversations change, and how much less confusion there is over things that you ordinarily think everyone else understands what you're doing or what you meant. And then you realize they don't receive it the same way you do.
Right.
And they don't interpret it the same way you do. And
right.
So the stuff we teach isn't just applicable to at the workplace. It's applicable at home and other aspects of life as well. And that's, I think, a lot of what folks that attend on May 3rd, that's a lot of what else they'll also be receiving, are things that they won't just help in the workplace, but they'll help in all aspects of life. So
in the Aaron mentioned clearing out the cobwebs. In the immortal words of George Clinton and Funkadelic, it's like free your mind and your ass will follow, you know. Cool. Let's touch base on the event and the who's and what's and the where's real quick, and then I want to get a little bit about both of your background. So just hit it again real quick. Leadercast, May 3rd.
Yeah. So May 3rd at Main Street Station. It'll actually be in the shed at Main Street Station, which is not like the shed in your backyard. It's a pretty cool building. So that we're looking forward to. And thanks to Crystal Lowry with the Main Street Station for helping us out with that. We've got, a lot of the old, a lot of the old Synapse folks are going to be involved in helping get this thing going. So lots of good connections from that. But 8 speakers during the course of the day. The actual simulcast portion will start at 10. Our event in Richmond will start at 9. Because we'll have a panel of local leaders that we'll get to hear from at that point. Tickets are $125 for the day, and that includes lunch and breakfast and coffees and drinks throughout the day. We'll even have I joked to somebody the other day, I'm just a coffee drinker. So when I get coffee, it's just black coffee. But I think that puts me in the minority now. If I go to a particular coffee shop and go, yeah,
I'm a black coffee guy.
I hear people order things that I'm like, what? I don't even know what that is. But we are going to have a friend is going to have a specialized coffee or warm beverage truck right outside the entrance for folks who want to buy something more than just, get something more than just a free cup of coffee. So we're excited to have that and make sure everybody's comfortable. May 3rd, it's a Wednesday. It's worth taking the day off. A lot of folks can get continuing education credits for it. And yeah, we're looking forward to it. The website for folks it's pretty simple. It's just leadercastrva.com. And you can go on there and buy your tickets. We're still looking for a couple of sponsors, and there's some sponsorship opportunities on there if folks are interested in that as well. So
cool. Thanks, man. All right, cool. Let's learn a little bit about you guys. We'll start with Aaron. We'll jump back to Aaron. Aaron, I don't think many kids when they're 5 years old say, I want to grow up and be a leadership coach, strategy consultant, live speaker, but you become one, and a really good one. How was your path planted you here?
I didn't start out on that path either. I had all the normal ambitions or usual ambitions of career and idea, and wanted to be a professional baseball player.
Oh, yes, me too.
One time, an architect, a firefighter, all sorts of different things. And then in high school helped to shift my focus. And so over the next 10 years, I started focusing in on community, nonprofits, and serving in and through the community. And what I saw in those 10 years was all of the challenges and needs on the leadership front. And so then in the next 10 years, I say, those paths started to align, and I saw the opportunity, these patterns, these ideas I was noticing in the workplace, not only in nonprofits, but for-profits, government. I saw an opportunity to work in that and to really tap into the human potential. As we've talked about, I found a way to help leaders unlock their own potential and the potential of their teams and organizations. So this has really been probably a 1 or 2 decade long journey for me that's now led me to today. And today I'm working through partners across the country, everywhere from our local landscape design firm up to some Fortune 100 companies, and leaders in each of those organizations, helping them uncover their own potential, using the voices, using simple tools and frameworks, helping them to see a side of themselves that they've never been taught before. So it's exciting to be able to do that every day, and to see how not only the leaders in our own community are being impacted, but how these leaders who are changed and transformed have an opportunity to change their own communities.
Very nice. Very cool. And of course, Bryan, you and I have had a number of conversations. I know your story, financial professional, and then some serious life-changing events. Tell us a little bit how you got here.
Yeah. So, I also wanted to be a professional baseball player when I was little, but then I realized I was no good at it. So,
well, we only need 6 more and we're good to go. So,
exactly. So, for about 30 years in the investment advisory / financial services arena, ran my own company for the majority of that, or had a partner. And then you mentioned, I'll try to be brief about this, in the fall of 2018, just walked around for a few weeks, thought I had a really bad stomach ache. Went to see my doctor, and by the end of the day, I had been admitted to the hospital with a diagnosis of end-stage liver and kidney failure, end stage. And for those who might know something about liver failure and the degrees, end stage sounds ominous enough, but so there's something called a MELD score that just is what they use to stage your liver failure. And mine that day was a 27, and that's on a scale of 0 to 40. At a 27, there's a 75% chance that you won't make it for the next 60 days. So I was told that night that I had 60 days to live, barring a miracle. And I didn't know what to say. So I said, well, what's the miracle? And they said, we have to keep you alive long enough to get you a new liver and a new kidney. So that was a struggle over the next 65 days. Lots of starts and stops with the heart, several days in a coma, a couple of pretty significant bleeding incidents, and then a very expensive flight from Richmond to Charlotte one night to where I ended up having my transplant done. Very fortunate. Along the way, even if some of the other things, I look back now and I can laugh because I'm here. I've me, and in the past, I use humor a lot to deal with life. And there was several moments during that period where there was no humor to be found in a lot of those days. But when I got into Charlotte and just figured everything was, I'm on the right path now. We're at the transplant hospital, so now it's just a matter of waiting. I actually came off the transplant list twice during the time I was down there, because they also found a lump on my thyroid, and we had to biopsy that and make sure that wasn't cancerous, and it wasn't. So I got back on the list, was able to leave the hospital for a couple of days right before Thanksgiving to go to some local family members to ostensibly celebrate Thanksgiving and then come back to the hospital. Didn't make it to Thanksgiving. I got a call the Wednesday night before. So I'd been out of the hospital for 2 days at that point. Got my call Wednesday night, and at 5:30 on Thanksgiving morning, 2018, got wheeled into surgery, got my new liver that day. Got my new kidney the very next day. I was lucky. I had a donor who had been very healthy up until the time that they actually became a donor. 6 days later, walked out of the hospital, and the path to recovery was great. At that point, I also knew that I'd been dealing with a crisis of passion with what I'd been doing for a living, and sort of felt like I was being pushed into doing something else. Didn't know what it was, but I sold my practice to my partner, and at that point got into some nonprofit work and some networking, not on the IT side, but actually introducing people to one another. So met Aaron at that point and started to learn some of the stuff he was doing, and just kind of watched him from afar a little bit. And just to throw this in here, I had, along with my partner, we had hired a business coach years ago. And frankly, I didn't think it was worth it. It was very just cookie cutter, out of a box. Here's what you do. And it wasn't personalized to us in any way. So part of meeting Aaron and, hearing this leadership, the one thing I knew he didn't like to call himself a business coach. So, and I'm that way too. I think the term is overused and doesn't really mean anything. Not to disparage folks who call themselves business coaches. I think it's gotten a lot better. But watching him, learning about the 5 Voices assessment for the first time after taking all these other assessments along the way, it really spoke to me. I thought it was, the information from it was just beyond anything I'd gotten before in this. So started to become certified in that, because I thought, there was a reason I coached football as a volunteer, and I always wanted to have some way to get the coaches to communicate better, not just with each other, but also with the athletes. And this is at the high school level. Literally the first time I took the 5 Voices, I thought, this is perfect. This is what will work. And then I found out that we have a colleague that actually works with, I don't know how many double digits number of NCAA athletic programs using the same tools. And I was like, of course he does. This stuff is great with that. So at that point of wanting to start to build that up, separated from, or was about to step down from from Synapse after having worked with them. And in fact, about to run a golf tournament to raise some money for 4 of our nonprofit partners. And got another chance to, or as I say, another chance for personal reflection that I didn't know I needed. So I survived a widowmaker heart attack in October of 2021. And at that point, I thought, okay, I really need this inner peace. And so I felt like I wasn't being pushed into it, but the door was just wide open that I have a lot to share with people, and it's and it can help folks get through a lot of difficult situations. And I feel like 30 years of running the investment advisory practice took me through a lot of things as well, a lot of insight. So I do love working with investment advisory practices now on this. I speak their language quite, very well. And but as Aaron has mentioned, what we do applies to so many. It applies to everyone. So what we have to be careful of is not saying yes to everyone, because we can use our own focus. So fortunately, in Richmond, there are several giant guides, and everybody has a different background. And Aaron and I are starting to do a lot of things together, which I'm excited about. and we'll be working with some churches here soon as well. So everybody needs it. And I mean, it doesn't matter what someone's role is. Everyone can learn to be a leader and have an impact on folks. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited about how we can bring transformational information to folks. And so that's how I got here. I didn't, just like everybody else, I didn't see myself being this. If I couldn't be a baseball player, I thought I was going to be an engineer, and somehow I got into finance. So it's sort of the path that was laid out for me that I stumbled upon. So
hell of a story for sure, man. You definitely can command a room.
Well, it's I'm thankful to be here. I'm thankful that I can help people. It's I think that's one thing you find with all the giant guys that we've met, that I've met. Aaron's known them a little longer, but the personalities are the same. Everyone, I mean, this, maybe not the sole purpose, but one of the top purposes is helping others succeed and get above the things that are holding them back. And it's we just had an opportunity to be down in Atlanta with the founders for a retreat, and it was literally as close to a family reunion type of atmosphere without the fights and talking behind people's back as you could be.
Without the sordid history.
I'm really excited to be a part of it, and equally as excited for this event on May the 3rd as well. So.
Leadercast RVA.com, right?
That's correct.
Leadercast RVA.com. And Bryan is at HarvestingChaosLLC.com, which is under construction, but will be released before too long, right?
That's right.
And Aaron is at... Go ahead.
Actually, meeting with Blair in a couple of days.
Okay, right. Yeah, I'm working with him as well. And Aaron's at aaronlee.co. Check out Aaron's work, Bryan's too, but Aaron's is up and ready for review. It's really fascinating stuff, and give these guys, give them a nod and check them out, and check out Leadercast, leadercastrva.com. Guys, I appreciate you taking some time and telling us about this and sharing your stories. It's always fascinating to catch up with you, and I always enjoy it. And I did not realize that you guys had known each other for that long. I thought you met at Synapse. Maybe you did. I don't know. But it sounds like the history goes a little bit further back than I realized.
I mean, I think we did meet at Synapse, but it was earlier. It was years ago at Synapse. So, but he's just one of those people. You get to know, his name gets around. You see him on billboards and all this. No. He's a very humble guy. He's an extremely humble guy. So I enjoy hanging around him. So
not the hospital ambulance chaser type of billboards, the good kind.
No.
Whatever that means.
As long as my picture doesn't go up in the post office, we'll be okay.
Very true. All right, Bryan Berry, Aaron Lee, thanks for being here. LeadercastRVA.com for more info. Appreciate your stories, guys, and your sharing. I appreciate your attention and intention and your influence. And see you guys again, hopefully, back on another Good Eye podcast.
Thanks,
Love it.
Jay.
Thanks to Bryan and Aaron for their time and telling us about Leadercast RVA and about their own paths and sort of the new age. Oh my gosh, I said it. I said the phrase new age, but I meant that literally, the new age of leadership, as we learn more about what people respond to, what makes a great leader, and the sort of the holistic approach to leadership. Find out more at LeadercastRVA.com for the event on May 3rd. And as I mentioned, you can go to Bryan's website and Aaron's website, all of which are available on the Good Eye Podcast website. That is goodeyepodcast.com, inside my own website, which is jsmack.com. And if you have any questions or want to reach me for any reason, hit me up at j@jsmack.com. Thank you very much for listening. And also, of course, as always, thank you for your time, attention, and intention.